Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first pilot episode of the POSCAST. This is the concept I pitched like 8 months ago when it was the first time I had ever taken MDMA, the drug commonly known as ecstasy, and I thought, we've got to get dudes on this drug talking about what it means to be a man. I think it'll be some constructive conversations. Now, about a week ago, I was in the desert with my little brother and his friends, and we took the drug. I told my brother's friend Matt about the concept of the podcast, and he immediately started talking about the first time he saw me, that my fingernails were painted, and that something jumped out at him about it, that it would be a good way to start this conversation. I had to do a lot of editing because the conversation was ranty and sprawly, and we started and stopped a couple times, so I cut it down a lot. And then the conversation we have is immediately followed by another one from a couple days later when we weren't on any drugs at all, reflecting on the situation. So now allow me to take you back to that night in Mecca, California, directly above the San Andreas Fault, sitting on warm desert sand, surrounded by high canyon walls that make you feel like a tiny baby in an enormous crib.
Like I was saying, dude, just go ahead and start. Are you just gonna do a video? Oh, yeah. Do a mic, dude.
It's a mic.
Oh, okay.
So I ran my concept of a podcast where dudes take MDMA and then talk about what it means to be a man. Matt here was telling me, dude, Ryan, well, here, you want to say something, Matt?
Okay, podcast. I'm gonna address you like that because I just need to slow down for a second.
So the first time you saw me, you thought what?
Okay, I'm gonna bring it back just a hair. I'm gonna try not to rant, but I'm gonna bring it back to my dad raising me. He kind of he's got a thing against like different people, not like I don't know. He's definitely okay. My dad's a racist. I'm not gonna say he's not, and it's fucked up to say it, but I occasionally I think about them, and I'll say them between Jimmy, Kyle, and I. We'll say a racist joke too, because we're fucking white men. We're white males, and it's fucked up that this is the way people are. Like, we're racist, and I wish people would just be. I want people to know. I wish they got this a little bit more. That the jokes aren't like, they're not trying to be personal. It's more of just like bringing out like, oh, like, yeah, that's a truth. Like, that's a truth. Or like, and even if it's like a bad one, dude, like you can't hide that stuff. And I know people aren't thinking the same way I am right now.
Can you go back to, you said like I painted my nails like one of the first times you saw me, and so
okay, yeah, Ryan, I'm gonna say this right now. And I know you guys know that I'm on MDMA. There's a fucking big-ass, complicated way to say that, but it's just pretty much whatever, Molly. Okay, but anyways, this is a good thing. It opens people up. I want to say that right now, just like as a starter, because I am going to get into some depth, and I'm sorry I'm talking fast and getting all rainy. Mm-hmm. It wants you to open, like, it's a very opening, and it gets things out of the way. My dad was such a weird, maybe good, probably some good, some bad influences on myself. But I'm going to just say this. If my dad saw Ryan walking down the street in his, like, pink and neon green shoes, which are fucking sick, those ones that wrap around. Oh, yeah. I want to get a pair of those so bad.
Shiggies.
Yeah, dude, they're so cool. Doing that, and wearing those with painted fingernails, I'm gonna say it, I fucking hate to say it, my dad would be like, oh, like, gay or something. I'm sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, I know.
I don't want to offend you.
No, you won't.
Okay. He would say that. And the first time I saw you, I was just like, not that I was like, he's gay, but I was just like, that thing always was in the back of my head where I was just like, that's different, or like, that's weird because my dad told me, like, he raised me that way, you know?
Yeah, it's hard.
And It's hard to break norms. It's so hard to break through people's mental barriers, dude, because you just have such a fixed view on some things, and you can't just think differently because it's bad, or it's not accepted, or you feel like it's not accepted, and you feel like if you do think differently, you're not going to be accepted.
Yeah.
So it was, his fingernails were different to me. I'd never seen it. I didn't know that guys would put nail polish on their fingers, because it was like such a girl thing. Because that's also, my mom did it when I was like little. She put fingernail polish on. My sister would do it. So my dad would just he made me think a certain way that I don't believe is a good way, because that was my big influence. Every week from the day I was born until I was about 16 years old, every Friday I went back and forth between my mom and my dad. And my mom has a big influence on me, while my sister was a little bit mean, but I still love her to death, and I know she loves me. I would go with my mom and her, and then my dad by himself. My dad just drank and just did what he could to get by and just give me a good life. And I know that that's a good thing, because he's just protecting me, and he wants me to, be happy. Yeah. And he wants the best for me. He would let me live in his house until he's dead. Yeah. And that's awesome. That's a great dad. I'm not saying he's not a great dad. He's not a great role model. He
tries to be a great dad. He tries to be a great dad, which he does really try hard to be a great dad to you. But in the end, he's not the best role model to follow after.
He's not a great role model. And you want to look up,
not this generation.
We're bringing this around to being a man. And you would think when you're a child, there's one man in your life that you look to. And you're like, what would this man do? And obviously it's my dad. Some people aren't as lucky enough to have their dad in their life, or any parents in their life. And if we're going to talk about being a man, I know other people would define it differently, and I'm sure they do. I'm sure everyone has a crazy definition of a man. They could range. But my sister is 3.5 years older than me. She was a little mean to me when I was younger, but I love her to death. I don't talk to her as much as I should. She has a beautiful 4-year-old daughter named Nora. I love her to death. She's becoming a human. It's so cool. She then 2 years later at work started to talk, while her and her husband currently that are married, which is Nora's father. She started to talk to this one of her managers at work at the sports bar she's at, and she ended up getting with him and having an affair and all this stuff, and was dating this guy, and then living with him, and then Nora was going back and forth every day for not every day, but probably most likely every week, for a good amount of her life. I did that too, not a good amount, but I'd say 4 or 5 months. But my sister hooked up with this guy, and he got her pregnant, and she kept the baby. Obviously, she would love anything that she could make. And then I want to say 5 months into the pregnancy, this guy just left. He was like, I'm going to work at the other, because there's a chain restaurant, sports bar thing. He went to go work at one in Miami to do an intervention or a convention or whatever you would call it. Yeah. And he just bailed.
Yeah.
He was just gone. And he's just gone. And then, he didn't, he was doing, pills and stuff, bad pills, probably taking, oxycodines, real hard, downers that make you just want to chill. And I've taken them when I've gotten really hurt. I have a terrible migraine, because they help me fall asleep. And I try not to abuse them. I'm going to say my whole life I've taken about 8, but I take them only when it's very bad and I just want to go to sleep and want to end my day.
Yeah.
However, be very careful. You should not abuse this, because they're so addictive. My mind tells me to take one.
Me too.
But I think he was on those, and because he had that same thing, but he also was a drinker. And after that, my sister's 5 months pregnant, not living at the same house as her husband, with her already 2-year-old child. And she's just back at my mom's house with me, and I'm still in high school with that, what am I going to do? And she just didn't know if she could go back to her husband, which his name is Zach. She didn't know because it was just like such a bad situation. And she finally broke down and came back to Zach and apologized and just told him that, like, hey, I knew I messed up. Like, just doing something wrong, like, that's so wrong. Like, you should never have an affair, cheat on anybody. If you really love them, you wouldn't. If you really did. And I don't think it wasn't that she didn't really love him. She just didn't know. And there's so many, we should know everything, but you can't. And humans are learners. You have to experience something to learn from it. My sister was like out on her own, didn't know what to do. Freaking, baby on the way, dude. Yeah. Like, she's going through so much, just like...
And someone else's baby.
And someone else's baby. And she already has a kid. She already has a little baby, like, that already needs a ton of help and everything. And she's making another one, which is such a crazy thing. She's making another human being, and she doesn't know what to do. And Zach brings her right back into his life. And it's just like, I love you no matter what. Like, you're the mother of my child, and I will watch after the child you're gonna, bear me from a different man, as if it was my own. Mm-hmm. And just be a dad. Like be his buddy, and teach him everyone has different morals, but as a good person, you teach him what's right and wrong, and you teach him how to be a good human being. And Zach does that. He does such a good job at it. Every time I go over there, he works at least 45 hours a week, comes home, and then watches the kids until they go to bed while my sister's at work at the sports bar studying because she's becoming a nurse. But his whole life is for those kids. He lives for those kids. And if you don't have kids, I don't know exactly how I would define you as a man. I would say that being a good human being in general, just being friendly to people and just assuming people are good before judgment is a good thing. I think I don't want to say that you have to be a father to be a true man. I think it does play a role in it, but it is kind of like... It does. Well, it's what makes you human.
Yeah. Because, it's kind of like one of the parts of life that it's like birth, puberty...
Yeah. I
guess, and then having a baby is it's a weird primal thing.
It is very primal, and if your parents didn't have a baby, you wouldn't be here right now. And if my parents didn't have a baby right now, and it's crazy because of how lucky we were out of the odds of you and I making it out of all the different experimentship. I'll bring it back. Sorry, podcast.
All right,
but I see Zach as a man because he's always in a good mood. He's always trying to teach the kids right from wrong and just do the right thing.
Please come. Let's do this telescope.
Sorry, podcast.
Telescope.
No, that was really good.
Bring a telescope.
I'll follow. I want to follow up on that in a little bit.
Podcast. We're getting a little sidetracked. We're gonna look at some stars, but we'll come back. We'll talk about a man later. Yeah. We'll be back later this evening. Thank you.
I have some more questions about Zach, I think.
Listen, tomorrow.
All right, we never followed up on Zach. This is 3 days later. 3 days later? This is Thursday. That was a Monday. Okay, we are no longer under the influence of any droge, any chemicals other than...
No chemicals.
Lentils. I had some lentils. So...
I did have a bang like an hour ago.
Oh, you had a bang?
I had a bang, but it's just a little caffeine.
So... we just listened to the raw recordings. How do you feel about the whole experience?
I heard myself doing like that a lot because my mouth was very dry. I was talking insanely fast.
And it was the desert. It was dry.
It was the desert. I personally believe I rant a little bit when we just listen to it now.
There's always a little bit of ranting. I don't think you need to worry about that.
There was a little rant. I really just wanted to make sure that people were able to understand it as good as they could, just so they could see at least a little bit of what I saw, or just get the same view that I was receiving from the whole situation. But we were discussing how would you define a man. And like I said, I think everyone has their own definition for what a man may be. My personal definition was my sister's husband, Zach. I personally think that Zach's a man for the situation that he was put in and how he responded to it, you know, accepting that everyone makes mistakes and just wanting to take care of others and be there for everybody. Your dad actually did he know about Kyle before Kyle knew, obviously.
Yeah. I think the story of Zach is very similar to what happened to my dad and my mom and Kyle and my little brother.
Yeah, Ryan's number 2 out of 7, and my best friend Kyle is how I met Ryan. And Kyle is actually the only child out of 7, and he's the youngest, that does not have the same father as the other 6. And he didn't know until I believe he was 14, I think.
Yeah, and I didn't know until I was like 23 or 4. I can't remember. Maybe older.
Yeah, and
he looks a little bit different than us, but like we all look a little different. So they never told us.
It was never questionable. I personally didn't know until I was told too. Kyle's 20, turning 21 pretty soon. He didn't really have much of a desire to meet his biological father since he wasn't there in his life, and he knew that John, which is your father, was his dad. That was the one who showed him about life and taught him things.
Yeah, he said he told me, I think the other day, he was like, I wish I wouldn't have even been told. Like, I wish I don't even want to know that guy. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me, and it's just sort of weird for me to know that now.
Yeah,
and I didn't know how I felt about that, but it's interesting for him to say that.
And for that reason, your dad being so accepting, I would consider your dad, like, in my eyes, he would be like a man, like a good father, a good dad. Even though he is a little goofy and loves karaoke and goes out in West Hollywood and hangs with the craziest. He's a good man. It's not something that's like more macho. It's something that's more like mental, like, and it's just like, I can do this and like this is okay, you know. Just accept.
Yeah.
And like you were saying about Kyle not wanting to know, my sister has been really questioning whether she should tell Eli, which is the child she had with that other guy that ran off. She was questioning whether she should tell him or not that Zach isn't his real dad. And I personally believe she shouldn't say anything because it really doesn't matter, because I think that Zach is the best dad I've ever met. I mean, he's a great role model and loves those kids to death. I don't see any reason for her having to tell him that, like, hey, Zach's not your real dad. Like, there's some other guy that you've never met that's your dad.
So this is one of my pilot episodes. When I had this idea, I was like, I got to talk about masculinity with dudes on MDMA. Do you think my concept was my drug of choice? Was that irresponsible of me? Was it necessary, unnecessary? What do you think about the dry run of my concept?
I personally have only done three drugs in my life. I've smoked weed, marijuana, some would call it. I've taken acid with you, and I've also taken MDMA with you. I personally believe that MDMA, out of the 3 that I have taken, is the correct one for discussing a topic like masculinity, because it doesn't really alter your state of mind. It rather enhances your thoughts and ideas. Sometimes it brings them to you faster than you can deliver them, which can be troubling because you try to talk really fast and you rant and you can't stay on topic. But if you can slow down and try to deliver your thoughts clearly in an organized manner, and some sort of story, I believe that it's the perfect drug for discussing that. Some people may consider masculinity differently. You know, everyone has their own opinion on everything. But it does break down those barriers where you would, that would still be held up when, say, like, someone is drinking alcohol or smoking marijuana or something like that. I guess it would be a man, like not a man, but just we'll say a male does not want to discuss something like that and say what masculinity is, like, just because they wouldn't want to define themselves or be defined as, like, maybe weak or I'm just viewed badly from other males or whatever it may be. And we all define things differently. Masculinity is a big one because for, since human existence has existed, I guess you could say, male has tended to be the more dominant gender until genders have gone a little bit, I don't know, I wouldn't say off the rails, but people identify differently now. And I don't want to offend anybody that may be listening to this that does not identify as male or female. I personally do not know all the lingo. I don't have any problem with anybody. I feel that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, whether it may be about themselves or others. So feel free. If I offend you, I'm sorry.
How do you think I should go about if I do this again? I don't know. Any critiques of the show? What do you think?
Oh,
the series,
just the interviews of about masculinity on MDMA.
Do you have any good questions or any sort of things I should bring up to future people?
I believe it was good. I think I understood what your concept was right away. I guess I could say that when you ask someone about masculinity, you could ask them possibly, who do you define as a man and why? What characteristics does this person hold?
That's a good idea.
That make you consider them a man, because then you'll be able to reveal how that person views a man and what characteristics they believe make someone manly. Also, once you ask them that, if they do have a father figure in their life, ask them if they would define their father as a man, because I love my father to death, and I personally, I would say he's a man, but there are a few things that make me go man, I wish he didn't do that, and they really weaken my view of him as a man. They don't fully allow me to be he's a man, which he is. He's taught me a lot of good things, but like I just said, it's not enough. I personally see my sister's husband, Zach, as a man because he's a really well-rounded guy and a great father and a great dad to his kids. I believe that's a big thing.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for, I don't know what we're going to call this series. The first one I called it the POSCAST because you just in such a positive mood. So it might be the POSCAST. But I've also been talking about not on MDMA, just masculinity with a couple people. And it's just been called Exterminate All Men because of all the culture trying to basically exterminate toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
So this is sort of exterminating that. If you're a dude out there and you want to be on the show, you want to be on the podcast, contact me. I'm looking for future interviews. It's a quest, and I hope you're ready to go on it. I don't know, anything else?
Elon Musk said this in Joe Rogan's podcast, and once I heard it, it kind of clicked in my brain, and I feel like others should hear it too.
I think people should be nicer to each other and give more credit to others, and don't assume that they're mean until you know they're actually mean. It's easy to demonize people. You're usually wrong about it. People are nicer than you think. Give people more credit.
Assume people are friendly, Don't go out and be mean to people. Understand some people may just be in a bad mood. Just try to be friendly. It'll make the world a better place.
All right. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Scooby-Doo, ba-ba-dee-ba-da-ba-doo-ba-dee.